Welcome to the Goliath Sourcing Academy podcast, where we talk all things property deal sourcing, packaging, business systems, and outsourcing. Whether you're sourcing for yourself, packaging deals for others, or a bit of both, then you're listening to the right podcast. Get more strategies, tactics, and tips for sourcing killer property deals over at GoliathSourcingAcademy.com. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Dunsmore and Brad Lazarus.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Goliath Sourcing Academy podcast. My name is Brad Lazarus. This is session 17 and I'm here with Mark Dunsmore. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, Brad. How are you?
I'm very good. Isn't it good to be back? It's nice to talk to you after 3.5 months.
I know, yeah. It's good. How are you? How are the kids?
Good.
Family well?
Yeah, lots happened. Yeah, I put out the Platinum program. Yeah,
well done.
Yeah,
That's good.
It's been really good. It's been really good. How have you been? Kids all
yeah,
right?
Good. Yeah, just took a few months off,
Good.
Sunning it up by the beach.
Yeah, no, it's...
with my laptop.
Yeah, nice to sand in your feet, just doing deals.
Just doing deals from the beach.
Deals. Yeah, no, it's good. No, it's nice to be back. We have had I say we've had a long break. We did put a bunch of podcasts out there, our Q&A series, for a while, which seemed to go down really well. They were like short, sharp Q&A shots, if you like, of sourcing adrenaline.
Energy shots.
Yeah, energy shots of choice. So that worked. I think that worked out quite well, but it gave us a little bit of breathing space to kind of get on and do a bunch of things in both the businesses, really. And I cannot believe that it is the 7th of March already, which is a bit mental.
I referred to that in sourcing with Mark, in the lab with Mark. I've taken over.
Easy.
Sourcing with Mark.
Yeah.
It's all about starting sourcing in 2017 and realise that we're already almost midway through March.
I know. So, we're into the final month of the quarter, which is amazing, really.
It's scary.
That is good. So no, a lot's been happening in that time. Obviously, we're doing some interesting things with the content that we're producing at Goliath Sourcing Academy as well. So we've been trying to put out some more interesting stuff like infographics, some slide presentations. Got a much more readable transcription we're trying to produce for every podcast as well, so people can download it and it's bookmarked, and so all that kind of stuff's been. We're setting up the systems to get all of that kind of rolled out. So
and our sourcing network as well.
Sourcing network going well. Yes, that was a big thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
So that's going very well, and just watch the space, everyone. If you're interested in joining that, we're going to be releasing the automated process soon, so you can get yourself registered and find out a bit more how to get involved in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so actually, we'll tell everybody about that maybe in the next podcast. Then we'll save that. We'll save
the excitement.
We'll open the loop. We'll close that one in the next podcast, as the script writers do. But tell us a little bit about. We've just been through a Platinum program launch. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Platinum program's like our flagship 7-step deal sourcing and packaging system program. We've just been through a launch, and you obviously do a lot of discovery calls, don't you, which are these kind of half-hour calls which people can put in with Mark to understand whether the Platinum program's right for them, does it fit with their goals and what have you. And off the back of those calls, there was some really kind of interesting insights that you got, which we then went on to kind of produce our next offer. Do you want to tell everybody about what that is?
Yeah, so absolutely right. I mean, I had a lot of discovery calls, and we open it up before the launch sequence and then after the launch. And one of the biggest points that came from the calls is a lot of people have been on sourcing courses with various other educators, some better reviews than others. But one of the biggest missing elements to those courses tends to be the ongoing support, and not just a formal, one call a month type support, but actually the support when you need it. So the support when you've got that deal that you want to get over the line, but you haven't quite got the experience to know how, or just that quick question that you want answering by the experts, the people that you've just had the training from, but of course it doesn't fit within the remit unless of course you upgraded into their £6,000 to £10,000 mentorship program. So what we've done, as our listeners are fully aware, we are all about support and help, and we want people to get deals. We really do want people to get deals. Ideally, we want to work alongside sources and help you package and sell deals, and obviously share the profits. So we've created a monthly membership program. So this is hot off the press. So it is, we've had a poll in the Facebook group, which came back as an overwhelming yes to what we're going to offer. So I'll tell you a bit about it. So it is a monthly membership program. So you pay monthly rather than paying a large amount up front. And it is very much a group coaching offer. So there is a private coaching group that is currently full of our platinum students. So we're going to open that group up to members of the community. And for a monthly fee, you will get access to that group. You will get group access to Brad and me. So we're in the group helping people on a daily basis, dependent on whether it's property related or marketing systems, automation related. We're going to include a group monthly webinar. So that monthly webinar is going to include all sorts of information, whether it be, new techniques that we're trialing, or whether it's just simply a deal clinic or a specific Q&A for members of the group. And then we're also going to include a one-to-one call with either Brad or myself per month as part of that monthly membership. So that will be a half-hour call. And again, it's just to ask us questions relating to your own individual journeys, whether that call is a pick-me-up because you're feeling down, or whether it's specifically related to a point that you've got a query on that you don't feel that you want to ask in the group. And those calls will obviously be whatever you want them to be. And I think we're going to include some courses, aren't we, Brad?
Yeah.
I think there's talk of including.
Your arm, didn't I?
You did. If it wasn't value enough, Brad wants to add more value, but that is what we're all about.
Yeah, as part of that kind of monthly membership, there'll be the 20 Ways to Source Property Deals course in there. You'll have access to that. And then the bootcamp recordings as well. So that's 9-10 hours worth of recordings of the bootcamp we held last year. And then there's also a new course which we're putting out there now, which is the Deal Analysis Masterclass, which literally goes step by step through analyzing various deals within various different strategies. So there'll be access to that for as long as you're a member as well. So it's loads. I mean, it is great value. So we don't normally kind of like to do the whole selling pitch thing on the podcast, but what we did find was that people didn't know that we had things that were on offer. So I think it's important that we tell people if they want to get further help and they want to be part of our community. This why we're mentioning this on the podcast now, really. So what we're going to do a little special introductory offer on this one, aren't we? We are. So we're thinking we're going to. I mean, the normal price is going to be £150. Plus, inclusive of that, wasn't it? £150 per month. So it's an ongoing monthly membership. So there are no contracted periods, no minimum monthly periods. It's just simply month by month for as long as you need it, as long as you feel you need the support. And what we're going to offer as a special gift to the first 50. Are we going to go for 50, yeah,
Brad?
50, yeah.
So for the first 50 people, for 50 members that join, on top of all the stuff that Brad's just gone, the bootcamp recordings, the due diligence masterclass, and the 20 ways, if you haven't already got the 20 ways, we're going to knock that down to £100 plus VAT, inclusive of that, sorry.
Yeah.
£100 all in on a monthly basis that will remain for the duration of your membership. So that's not just your first month. That is £100 for the duration of your membership in the group. So, basically it is access to a group, private coaching group. It's all those courses that Brad's gone through, and one-to-one calls with Brad or me on a monthly basis, and a group webinar for, in effect, a sixth of what some mentorship programs charge, even a tenth of what some on an annual
really
basis.
We try to structure it this way to be as accessible as possible.
We know not everyone has, £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 for courses up front, and we understand that, but that doesn't mean you can't go out and source property deals. So we want to be able to help you, source deals and start replacing an income. And if you start sourcing deals and you want our course, of course, we're not going to say no. But equally, if you just want the support and you've been on courses before, that is what this is for.
So if you're interested, go to goliathsourcingacademy.com/members. That's goliathsourcingacademy.com/members, where we'll just have a little rundown of what we've mentioned here, and then the opportunity to get signed up as well. So should we tell people what's on the rest of the show?
Absolutely, Brad.
Yeah. So we've got the normal format as we're back. Goliath Facebook group Q&A session. This is a question from Paul Pang. What's this one?
So this was a good question, I thought, because I think there's a common misconception that all sources just charge investors 10 grand a deal. And the reality is that that's not true. And Paul's question this week is
the rate we do podcasts, it could be monthly, right?
Well, it won't be now, will it?
Exactly,
We're definitely on a regular
That's true.
program. So this question is, I'm currently sourcing a list of direct-to-vendor properties for sale and building an investor list from scratch. Which side am I representing? So that was part one of the question. And then I understand I can only receive my fees from one side. So which side should I charge? So we're going to be answering that, Paul. For you.
Good question, Paul.
It is a very good question, and actually one that a lot of people will think they know the answer to, but actually they don't.
Ooh, open the loop.
Love it.
Right.
Love it.
Let's
next month, the answer.
Yeah, after the break. Right, so sourcing with Mark this week. Now you got mixed up with your months because this is about getting started in 2017, but you still got actually this is very well, what is it before I start commenting on it?
Well, we could talk about it being the start of the financial year.
We could, if we're clutching
or
at
we
straws,
could just admit to the mistake. Well, to be fair, this was always going to be part of the plan for the beginning of the year. And actually, whether you're listening to this in January or whether you're listening to this next year or whether you're listening to this in June of 2017, the point is, if you're getting started in sourcing, there are a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of things to get yourself organized with, and there's a lot of things to plan out. So whether you're starting in January or whether you're starting whenever you're starting, this sourcing with Mark is all about where should you begin, how should you get yourself set up, and it applies to both investors sourcing for themselves and also property sources looking to set up a deal packaging business. So really useful content this not that they're not all full of useful content, of
even
course.
if you say so yourself, yeah.
But this is really 11 and a half minutes of it, of course. 11 and a half minutes of pure content on getting yourself going and disciplined to get the best results.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Actually, this time of year is a time of year when you start straying. And you've lost sight of your goals and your KPIs and stuff. So this would be a good reminder, I think. So good stuff. And in the lab with Brad this week, I've got the top 5 business and marketing podcasts and the lessons they've taught me. So thanks to Peter Demek for, I hope I've pronounced that right, Peter, Demek, for the inspiration for this segment. I know he asked on the group end of last year if I could just share what I'm kind of listening to, reading, so to speak. So instead of just going through a long list of podcasts, I thought, I'll pick out, essentially what are my favorites that I kind of almost keep going back to and actually see if I could provide some kind of insight into why I keep going back to them. What are the kind of central key kind of lessons and concepts and ideas that I get out of those? So that's in the lab with Brad this week. So
because of your age.
Which bit?
That you keep going back to them.
Well, yeah, some of them are 25 years old. Yeah, no, they are good.
I was thinking because you keep forgetting about it.
Yeah, no, they got what you mean, the ideas and the concepts in them. I have to go back and remind myself.
The general podcast.
I know. It was my birthday the other day, but let's gloss over that.
Mine more recently.
Yes, that is true. Okay, so I think that's it for our little intro. So let's get on with the show.
Now it's time for the Goliath Facebook group Q&A session. Got any burning property sourcing related questions? Tap into the minds of hundreds of property pros just like you inside our free Facebook group. Head over to www.goliathfbgroup.com. Okay,
so welcome back to the Q&A. So we left it on a bit of a cliffhanger. And
Indeed.
I'm sure everyone is poised on the edge of their seats. Hopefully those of you that are driving have pulled over with the excitement to keep the roads safe. But I'll read the question again, and then what we'll do is I'll break the question down into parts so that we answer it in full, and give people something to think about today with regards to charging fees. Now, fees has always been a big question. We get asked a lot, don't we, Brad? How much should I charge? How do you work out the fee? How do you work out what fee I should charge on a certain strategy type? But we've never been asked about which side are you representing, and then about your fees only coming from one side, which is generally the investor. So I'm going to sort of break it all apart, and like I say, hopefully it will give people something to think about. Now, the first part of the question, which side am I representing? So I'm currently sourcing a list of direct-to-vendor properties for sale and building an investor list from scratch. Which side am I representing? The best way that I can answer this is to remember that you always represent both sides. So you will always be representing the seller, and you are representing the buyer. Now, of course, if you're working with another sourcer, they're probably going to be representing the investor if they brought this. But for the sake of this answer, we're going to be referring to you've got the investor and you've found the direct-to-vendor lead. Now, the key to property sourcing is that the first thing you should always think about is finding the best solution for the property owner. The property owner has come to you off the back of some sort of marketing, whether it's referrals, whether it's direct mail, whether it's through leafleting, and they've come to you to solve a property problem. So in this respect, you are representing the seller because you need to find the best solution for their individual circumstances. Now, of course, the investor is the person who is going to buy that deal from you, and you will then represent the investor through the transaction as well. But as a sourcer, we're an intermediary between both the seller and the investor. So always remember that you are solving the property problem for the owner, and then you're finding the investment deal for the investor, because without either, you've got no business. So if you've got a seller but no investor, or an investor but no property leads, you will have no business. You need to treat them both as importantly as each other. So really important. Quite often people think they're representing the investors, but really it should almost work the other way. Just because the seller in a lot of instances doesn't pay your fee doesn't mean that you're not representing them as well, because you need both parties to amicably and smoothly progress through the transaction in order to ensure you get your fee. Now, what that brings me on nicely to are the fees. So I mentioned there, often the case is that the investor is going to be paying the sourcing fee, but that's not always the case. So the second part of Paul's question was, I understand that I can only receive my fees from one side. So which side should I charge? Now, the reality is there is absolutely nothing stating that you can only receive your fees from one party. There is nothing that states that you can't charge the seller a selling fee and the buyer a buying fee. Some sources actually represent the property seller and don't charge the investor a fee. They actually charge the seller a fee for selling the property. Now, you will generally not get as high a fee from the seller as you do from an investor. But again, it all depends on the numbers in the deal. So just remember, some sources represent the seller, so it's the seller that pays a fee, in the same way that an estate agent would represent the seller. So the contract between you, the sourcer, is with the seller. The investor doesn't pay a fee. There are also other sources who charge both the seller and the investor a fee. So you charge the seller a fee for selling and the investor a fee for buying. And what you can often do this way is you can reduce the fee so you're not charging the same as an estate agent might charge to the seller. And then you can also then charge the investor a smaller sourcing fee to buy the deal. So you don't end up worse off as the sourcer, but in effect, both parties have paid to sell the property. And then, of course, you've got the most commonly used, which is the investor pays your fee on completion. And they may pay a reservation fee to get details, etc. But the point is the investor pays your fee. There's no right or wrong. Like I say, the most common practice is the investor pays. But what I would say is that it very much depends on the situation, the circumstances of the seller, as to whether you're going to charge the seller a fee at all. Quite often, as property sources, we are dealing with sellers who are in a position where they may be in financial difficulty, or it may be an emotionally difficult time. And the reality is, do we really want to throw in another cost to what is potentially already a very difficult set of situations? So assess the seller's circumstances as to whether you can or you should charge them a fee. But then what's really important is make sure that fee arrangement, whatever it might be, is drawn up in an agreement with the parties that are going to pay you the fee. So whether that's with the seller, with the buyer, or with both, make sure that you've got it drawn into an agreement. You've got email confirmation that they agree to the fee, and that you, to the investor, you can include it in your deal calculations and get them to acknowledge that the fee is chargeable. With the sellers, it's more important probably to get a selling contract, same way as an estate agent would, but just make sure it is drawn up in an agreement. So, that's the long answer, Paul. In short, which side am I representing? Both. I understand that I can only receive my fees from one side. Not correct. You can receive your fee from either party or all parties. It just depends on the deal itself.
Whoa! What a monster. What a monster of an answer, and an even bigger monster being good.
What's that coming over the hill?
From Paul. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it. Such great questions. You're really testing Mark on stuff like that. But he came out. I love questions. He came out. I know you do love it, don't you? And you can just tell in your voice.
Contrarian.
Yeah, absolutely. So look,
the disruptive sourcer.
So if anyone's got any questions, please post them up into our free Facebook group. You can go to goliathfbgroup.com. That's goliathfbgroup.com, and that will send you straight through to the Goliath Sourcing Academy free Facebook group, where you can just join in the conversation. It's got very busy in there lately. We're going to actually start inviting some more experts in there, so we can get a lot more people's questions answered. So come in and get involved. So I think next up,
more of me.
Yeah. Next up, Sourcing with Mark.
Sourcing with Mark. Innovative and advanced strategies for doing better property deals.
Welcome to this session's Sourcing with Mark. Very excited to be back on the podcast record. And I thought, you know what? Even though it's March and we are sort of nearly a quarter of the way into the year, scary stuff, what I wanted to do was just run into getting started in property sourcing in 2017. It's called So Much to Consider, but where should I begin? And the biggest reason I thought I'd start this is the number of calls I've had in the recent weeks with the launch of our Platinum program and the future launch of other products has been the overwhelm. People are really struggling with, so many strategies to choose from, so many different property types, so many different income goals. What's the best thing to do in order to achieve X? What do I do to find Y? And the biggest issue with having too much to go at is that if you try and go at everything, you dilute your message and your marketing can become incredibly expensive. And the reason it becomes incredibly expensive is because what you're in effect doing is targeting all different strategies. Now, if you target all different strategies, what you're going to have are several different messages. Several different messages get targeted at several different people, and those several different people will respond in different ways. So, of course, the biggest issue with that is you're going to spend a lot of money, you're not going to have a very strong message, you're not going to have a very consistent message, which means you're not going to get the results. So what we need to do is choose a strategy, choose a property type, and go and get those deals. So what we're going to run into in this session, first of all, how to make a decision. So if you're sourcing for yourself, we know that there are a lot of listeners out there that aren't necessarily interested in just setting up a sourcing business. So if you're sourcing for yourself, for your own portfolio, you're going to have to get an idea in your head as to what income target do you want to achieve. So what do you want to achieve on a monthly basis with regards to your rental income? So money in the bank net after all your costs. Now, once you've got your income target, what you're going to then do is you're going to have to decide a strategy that's going to get you to that income target. Now, don't just think, HMO's cash flow, £4,000 a month, I'm going to go for those, because the reality is they are tough. They're hard to manage. Keeping the consistent cash flow isn't as easy as a lot of people might make out, but they are a great strategy. But if you're just starting out, I would certainly recommend thinking about alternative strategies that are maybe less management intensive, just to dip your toes in the water, and then you can obviously progress onto the bigger stuff. But choose a strategy. So what strategy is going to get you to that income target? So you're going to lay out a plan. Once you've chosen a strategy, you're going to have to choose the property type. So what type of property is best suited to the strategy that you've chosen to get your income goals? And then what marketing technique is best used to go and get those leads? Is it going to be direct mail? Is it going to be private ads? Is it going to be estate agents? There are a number of different leads generation strategies. Those of you that are already listening, we have a course called 20 Ways to Source Property, and that is exactly what it is, 20 different ways to source property. But not every one of those ways works for every property strategy and every property type. So you need to choose the property type, the strategy, and the income target, and then choose the best marketing techniques to go out there and get those leads. Now, if you're sourcing as a business, what you want to do is you want to go and find an investor or two, maybe three maximum, to start sourcing to order for. So I'm not going to go into how to qualify your investors. That's a whole different sourcing with Mark. But find those investors. They will tell you what they want. So they then know what strategy they're after. They know what property type they're going to be after. They know what income target they want to achieve. And then you follow exactly the same process. So you know their strategy, they know their income target. So now what marketing method is going to be the best to go and find those leads? And off we go to find the leads for our investors. Now, all of this is well and good, but what will happen is you need to remain focused now. Now you've made the decision. Now you've chosen your strategy. You've chosen your marketing techniques. We now need to have focus. So in order to build a successful sourcing business or a sourcing platform for those investors that are doing it for themselves, you need to focus on what we talked about in the making a decision section. If you don't focus, you're going to get distracted. If you get distracted, you're going to dilute the message, the marketing message that you put out there. If you dilute your message, you will get fewer leads. Fewer leads is going to mean you get less deals. Less deals will mean that you get frustrated. And what happens when you get frustrated? You start to get what we call, and for those avid listeners, you know we've referred to it before, you get deal desperate. And what that means is you will not analyze deals properly. You will try and force numbers in order to get deals over the line. You will start venturing out looking for different strategies because for some reason you've sent out 4 letters and you haven't had 4 responses to finding an HMO, for example. And so what you'll do is you will get bad deals, or you will get fall-throughs when the reality sets in that halfway down the progression phase, the numbers don't work, or a surveyor goes out and actually finds that the market value is nowhere near what you said it was. And, of course, that will damage you even more. So remember, stay focused on the message, focus on the marketing activity that you've chosen to go down, and that will lead to much more consistent results. And that brings me on to the next stage, which is actually consistency. So what you need to do when you have decided all of the above, what we've gone through already, you're going to need to stay consistent with the marketing that you send out. So don't think that the first batch of the letters that you send out, if you're going to use direct mail as a marketing method, don't think that the first batch of direct mail letters are going to yield amazing results, because realistically they're not. They're not going to get the best results ever. But what you need to do is you need to be realistic. So I'm telling you now that you will not get great results from the first batch of letters that you send. Remember that when you first send them out. Be realistic, because this will help you stay focused and consistent in the marketing approach that you've got. Because most marketing strategies, to be brutally honest, the purpose of a marketing message is to build rapport. You've got to win trust, and you want the property owner to take action and get in touch with you. Now, whether this is an email on a Gumtree lead, whether it's a direct mail letter, whether it's a Facebook advert where you're getting people to read your message, the point is, do you really think that they are going to trust you, know, like, and trust you after one message, one letter, one Facebook ad, one email on Gumtree, one conversation? The honest answer is no, they're not. They're not, unless they are incredibly motivated and they're just desperate for some sort of solution and you've hit them at the right time, which does happen, but they're not the ones that we want to build a consistent approach for. We want to build that know, like, trust message, so that the people that are receiving those letters, it's potentially going to take, I think the marketing industry sort of guideline is something like 4 to 7 points of contact is what it takes to gain a customer's trust. Now, 4 to 7 points of contact might mean phone calls. It might mean adverts hitting them, a Facebook advert coming up in their feed a few times. It might mean 4 to 7 letters that you need to send out. Leaflet drops. If you are still leaflet dropping, then you want to be doing that on a consistent basis. Every 4 to 6 weeks, dropping it again. But as you can tell, 4 to 7 points of contact does not happen within your first 30 days of marketing. So you've got to be very realistic. So in conclusion, obviously, as with all the sourcing with marks, I can't go into massive detail because there is so much to go into. But just to conclude, just to get you going in 2017, just to get you more disciplined and consistent in your approach to get you better results, you want to make sure you choose a strategy that you're going to source for. Now, this doesn't mean that if something else comes up, you're not going to package and sell that on, but your focus needs to be on one strategy, because that one strategy is going to give you a specific marketing method or a specific number of marketing techniques to generate the leads for that strategy. Then you need to go and take action. It's all well and good doing all this prep, but if you don't take the action and send the letters out, you're never going to start. And remember, the quicker you start, the quicker you're starting to build that rapport and trust with the property owners that you're sending letters out to. You need to remember to be consistent. Send those letters out on a regular basis. Drop those leaflets on a regular weekly basis. Get a plan together, a marketing plan. And the most important thing of all, with any property sourcing and deal packaging strategy. Whether you're doing it for yourself, whether you're building up a business, you've got to be patient. So you've got to make sure that you've got patience, you have faith in the system, faith in what we promote and teach and help with. And if you keep all of that consistency, you keep the focus, you keep the drive, you stick to your decisions, you will have success in property sourcing. Whether it's in your first month, in your first 3 months, the point is the success will come on the basis that you remain consistent. And the biggest thing with consistency is that the majority of property sources out there are not consistent in the approach that they take. So as they fall by the wayside, you can pile through and pick up all the leads that they've worked hard to build by sending out the first letter, but they've not sent out the second, third, and fourth. And what will happen is they're helping you, because by the time you get to the fourth, fifth letter and they are ready to pick the phone up, they can't remember whether it was your letter or someone else's. The point is your letter comes through offering the same thing and they will get in touch. And so that's what I want you to do as a guide starting sourcing. Hope you've enjoyed the first Sourcing with Mark of the new season. And as always, happy sourcing.
Now, thank you, Mark. Great sourcing with Mark. Again, we touched on it earlier in the podcast, didn't we? That this is, I think that was going to be a good reminder for people to maybe kind of go back and look at their goals and what they were looking at planning on doing in the first. That's my phone. That's not very professional, isn't it? Right. That's never happened before, has it? So yeah, I think that's a kind of a good one. But if you were a complete beginner to sourcing, how would you kind of get started? Because I think a lot of people probably at this time of the year, I spoke to somebody before actually who was literally just getting started in property sourcing, and maybe it's this time of the year is the time of year when people start to think about kind of making a change because the plan that they had from the beginning of the year isn't quite going as well as they felt it should have done. So what would you say was the best way to get started in sourcing now?
I mean, good question. And I think the answer is, if you're completely new to property sourcing, one of the most difficult hurdles to get over are the direct to vendor conversations. And finding direct to seller leads is difficult. Like I mentioned in Sourcing with Mark, you have to remain consistent. It does take time. You have to be patient. You have to remain focused. So what that means, of course, is that when they do come about, what you don't want to do is mess them up. You don't want to say the wrong things or get nervous or not go around the property and spot all the things that you need to spot. So if you are completely new to property sourcing, i.e. packaging deals up and selling them, or just property investment for yourself, the best place I would always recommend to start is with estate agents. And the big reason for that is that you can mess up really with estate agents, and you can arrange a second viewing, you can arrange a third viewing, you can arrange a fourth viewing, you can ask questions and then phone back the estate agent and ask more questions. Because when you first start out, you're not going to get everything nailed down straight away. If you've had some sort of education or you've had some sort of training, you will have a head start. So you'll know a few of the things to look out for, a few of the questions to ask, a few of the sort of issues to look out for when you're viewing. If you haven't had any training and you just want to get cracking, then estate agents are great because you can see all the property details on sites like Rightmove, Zoopla. You can see things before you get there, so you can almost do a bit of preparation just by looking at the photos. Have a look at what sort of things are going to need to be calculated for refurb estimates, and have a look to see on the floor plans whether there's anything that you can do to make them bigger, make them have more bedrooms, etc., etc. So it's what that means, it's going to buy you a bit of time, it's going to get you that experience. You're going to be able to go and view quite a few properties, whether they're right or wrong. And what it might actually do, as part of Sourcing with Mark says, decide on the property type for the strategy that you're sourcing for, you might find by viewing a few houses with estate agents that that property type that you thought isn't right. That's not the right type of property for the strategy that you're sourcing for, and it'll discount that from your future marketing. So that's again long answer, but short. Estate agents.
Yeah, good stuff. Excellent, great answer. Okay, let's move. We're going at quite a pace today, so let's move on to In the Lab with Brad.
In the Lab with Brad, marketing, systems, and outsourcing hacks for property pros.
Hi and welcome to this episode's In the Lab with Brad, my top 5 business and marketing podcasts and the lessons they've taught me. So, podcasts are one of my favorite things. I have to say, I remember listening to podcasts on a first or second generation iPod, which must have been probably over 10 years ago now. And I'll be honest, I really can't even remember what I was listening to back then. It's probably some music-based content. But roll forward just a few years from when I started listening to podcasts, and I became obsessed with taking in as much info as I could around marketing and business in general. Now, like most avid podcast fans, I must have listened to thousands and thousands of hours of content. And I've always been into running and endurance sports, which has given me loads of opportunity to have extended periods of listening time. Now, nothing gives me greater pleasure than going out for a long run, having 2 or 3 podcasts teed up. I really can't think of a better leverage of time. So rather than give you a long and exhausted list of podcasts that I've listened to and that I rate, I thought it would be more insightful just to keep it a little bit more succinct, so down to 5, and stay within the business digital marketing topic niche. And also take this opportunity to give you some kind of insight into some of maybe the key lessons that I've learned from each of the podcasts. So when I say lessons, I'm really referring to kind of the overall themes, the approaches, and the ideas that I take from each podcast and why I find them useful. So in no particular order, here goes. I Love Marketing. Now, this is a podcast called I Love Marketing. Now, the show must be in its 5th or 6th year. And at the time of recording, they're touching about 300 episodes. So it's presented by 2 guys, Dean Jackson and Joe Polish. Both are US based. Now, Dean's background is very much in real estate. He was a realtor in the US, and Joe, in his words, was a dead broke carpet cleaner. And both of them actually found direct response marketing. So Dean went on to be very successful in real estate, and then teach people the system that he used to grow his business, and the same with Joe in carpet cleaning. So he was a carpet cleaner, and then Joe grew his carpet cleaning business and then went on to sell millions of dollars of marketing training products. But it's actually Dean that had the bigger influence on me, and I actually paid a lot of money to attend one of his 3-day mastermind sessions in London a few years ago. Actually, the experience of being in that mastermind session for me was absolutely mind blowing. It was being so immersed in that deep level marketing conversations with like-minded business owners that totally kind of understood the power of marketing and the way it could shift businesses onto a higher level. It was such a great experience. Now, the biggest lesson that I take from Dean is that all the tools and the apps and the latest marketing fads, all of those in the world, don't give you the business breakthroughs. Actually having absolute clarity on who your target audience is, taking the time to be clear on understanding what they're thinking, what conversation is going on in their minds, and then going on to construct your message to connect with them. That's what gives you breakthroughs in business. Okay, so next one is a podcast called Conversion Cast. Now, this is the podcast from Lead Pages. Lead Pages are a kind of software app company that help you build landing pages and generate leads. You might have heard of it. They're quite popular. They seem to have crossed over outside and more like the internet marketing sphere. So I really love the format of this podcast, as it's really no more than 15 minutes long and very tactical. So each episode they have a guest on that has run a series of essentially digital marketing experiments and come up with a winning campaign formula that has helped them grow their business. So they share the campaign step by step with a listener. Now, if I'm looking for ideas on how to increase click-through rates, opt-ins, reduce my cost per leads, and so on, this is where I go for inspiration. Now, the big lesson here is that everything is a test. I'm always reminded of how lucky we actually are these days that we can so quickly and cheaply test an idea and prove or disprove an assumption. As little as 10 to 15 years ago, it would have cost 10, 15 times more than it does now to run a simple marketing test. So this podcast is the embodiment of how and why we should be testing all of the time. So next is super fast business. Now, I've been a fan of this podcast for many, many years. It's presented by a guy called James Schramko from Australia, who really walks the walk. Now, there is no set format to this podcast, as he likes to mix things up a lot. He'll go from straight one-on-one interviews with experts in specific niches to interviews with students of his that have had success through to short, sharp, tactical or strategic business tips. Now, what I've always liked about James is that he always forces you to zoom out and look at the business from a 10,000 foot view and try to keep things simple. He's successfully built and sold service-based businesses of up to, think one of his last businesses was up to 40 virtual staff. Now, I've always believed the virtual business model, and James is proof that that doesn't just mean that virtual business is the business owner and just one or two VAs. You know, he's shown that you can build a virtual business with an effective management structure, systems and processes that can be even more efficient than traditional business. So while there isn't a specific kind of digital marketing lesson to pick out here, the bigger virtual business lesson I take from the content of the podcast keeps my virtual business vision on track, so to speak. Okay, so next is the Active Marketer podcast. Now, I'm a big fan of systems and automation, and it's incredible what levels of marketing and sales automation we're able to do these days with no human input. That 5 years ago would have taken hours for an individual to do. So this podcast is all about that. Now, more specifically, it's about using the email marketing automation software called Active Campaign within your marketing campaigns. Now, you don't have to be a user of Active Campaign to get great value out of this podcast. So don't let that stop you. But in and amongst the more kind of tactical content, there are interviews with marketing and business automation experts. So just listen to 2 or 3 episodes and you'll be filled with a ton of ideas of the potential that you can implement and take into your business. So the lesson here is that marketing automation is seriously powerful, and that every day what we consider to be traditional businesses are discovering how they can engage, connect, and sell more products and services to their customers in a more efficient way than we ever really thought possible. So just one caveat here, and be mindful of the lesson that Dean Jackson in the I Love Marketing podcast taught me, that no amount of automation or gadgets or whatever will work if you haven't first taken the time to understand your audience. Okay, so finally, a podcast called The Startup Podcast. Now, I've really grown to love this podcast over the last few months. Their strapline is a podcast for what it's really like to get a business off the ground. And I have to say, it does exactly what it says on the tin. The podcasts are essentially a series of real life stories about the experiences of various business owners as they in their startups and as they go about trying to build their businesses. It's really very cleverly produced with a narrator who occasionally drops in between the main content. Now, that main content is real life content, so real life conversations between the co-founders. You're being a voyeur essentially, and you're listening in on the conversations of the co-founders, maybe the conversations with the founders and their suppliers and the staff, and even in a few episodes you get to hear the conversations between a founder and his wife or his girlfriend girlfriend about, when he's at a low point or when things are going really well, whether they need to shut the business down. So it's really, it's a fascinating kind of insight, and it's absolutely compelling. So being business owners ourselves, we have many ups and downs, and after listening to these stories, I think you'll find it really comforting to know that there are business owners all over the world going through exactly what we're all going through.
Oh, another good one from Brad.
You like that?
We do like in the lab with Brad.
Who's we?
Listen, I get people round. Yeah, we get people round. Popcorn, sofa.
Me, Jill, the kids. We sit there. We listen to Brad. Can't get enough. Fantastic.
Yeah, the kids want your autograph.
Absolutely right. So, but look, no, I love a good. I do love podcasts. I think they're the most amazing things. I think they just tick so many different boxes, which is why we were so keen to get our own podcast up and running, weren't we? Really, but
yeah, absolutely.
But you're partial to a podcast or two, aren't you? What are you listening to at the moment?
I have to admit, I'm one of those that I like listening to podcasts based on stuff that maybe we don't do as much of in the property world. So one that I'm listening to at the moment. I keep referring to the royal we.
Yeah.
One's listening to in one's spare time.
I'm I sing me and my two ears. We're currently listening to
my split personality.
Yeah.
At the moment I'm listening to the Holiday Let Success podcast, Elaine Watt, which is excellent.
I have to say, I listened to that before I dived into Airbnb and sorting out my place in Spain, and it was great. I learned a huge amount from that one. Yeah,
the guests are really good. I think I think Elaine gets guests on from really good, useful, sort of, not affiliates, the wrong word, but as in resources,
complementary.
Companies. Yeah, complementary sort of companies, Booking.com, Airbnb, people teaching how to use Airbnb, all the sort of different offerings that you can offer guests. And actually, service accommodation is a massive, massive upward trend. But what I think is kind of underestimated is holiday lets. It's something we're interested in. And I think that's a really good one. So I really like that. And then, I listen to some of the other, the bigger ones, things like Rob's Disruptive Entrepreneur. I like that. I like listening to his interviews with successful businessmen and women. I love listening to success stories of what other people have done. And, I think the other thing is when you're listening to podcasts, especially podcasts that have interviews with other people, it makes you realize that very few successful entrepreneurs had it given to them on a plate, if any.
I was say, if any, yeah.
People forget that. People sort of jump into the world, again, property sourcing. People think that to become a successful property sourcing business, it just happens overnight. You send out a few letters, you do a Facebook ad, and suddenly you're sourcing 28 deals a month. And it's hard work, it's consistency, and I think listening to other people's stories and their own journeys, it's I really like podcasts like that. And I like Mark Homer's. I love listening to factual sort of topics, things like the economics and numbers and
well, I say one of the things that I always think about, because there's so much to listen to, and I'm a bit of a kind of a magpie with all that kind of stuff, literally just kind of wanting to kind of listen to everything all at the same time and just get as much information in my head. And actually I've worked out over the years, a way of kind of deciding what to listening to, like a filtering mechanism, which is basically, do I have a problem in the business at the moment that needs to be solved? If I do, then let me go and find a podcast or an episode of one of my regular podcasts that will help give me an insight, some kind of angle, a method, a concept, a strategy, a tactic that will help me potentially overcome that problem. So it's almost like on a need to listen to kind of basis.
Yeah.
So rather than just kind of going, right, this guy's got 65 podcasts, I'm going to listen to them all. I just don't have time. I'd love to, but I just don't have time to do it. So actually now I come at it from that angle, which I find is I don't know, it's just more beneficial. I find it's a better use of my time, and as much as anything, headspace. Because there's only so much space in one's head. You finish a long day, you might want to kind of go out for a run or something, or get on the treadmill or whatever. Actually you want to listen to, you almost want to listen to something that you might have been related to a problem that you had during the day. That's for me, that feels the most productive use of my listening time. So that's my kind of angle. If anybody's wondering how they should go about listening to these literally tens of thousands of hours of podcast content that is out there, that would be my take.
I think that's the other thing. You've made a very valid point there in terms of there is so much out there, and sometimes it's kind of like having all these different property strategies, all these different marketing strategies that you can go at. And, if you dip your toe in lots and lots of different ones, it's a recipe for disaster, because you get overwhelmed, you get confused, you start crossing over, you can get I think the big one is overwhelm. So many different things to consider, so many different things to try. And if you do exactly like you've just said, Brad, and focus on what you want to get out of it, and use the podcast as a form of training. They're a form of free training that you have available to maybe hone in your focus, or even discount something that you maybe thought was of interest, but it isn't now that you've listened to a podcast and realized that it's not for you. And I think that people, it's kind of like the audiobook thing. I'm a very big Audible fan. I don't like reading books. I like listening to books, driving, gym. And I found that at one point last year, I was listening to different Audible books on different topics all at the same time. So I was dipping into one, and then dipping into another one, and then dipping into another one, and just listening to them, depending on what I was doing, I was listening to a different one. And you lose the effect of the message, because you can't remember which book had what message in it, And ironically, finding the focus of listening to an Audible book on the one thing has made perfect sense. Yeah, to that whole
Gary
theory.
Keller's book, isn't it?
It is Gary Keller's.
Focus and
well worth a listen, everyone that hasn't. Brad introduced me to that. To be fair.
I read that over Christmas. I think everyone needs a reminder on how to do less and remain focused on a few things.
Absolutely. I think, and, it's funny, isn't it? So many people come up to, when we're in the gym, and people come up and go, oh, you're always in the gym, you're running businesses. Shouldn't you be working 28 hours a day? And you think, no, not really. If you're working smart, you don't need to work 28 hours a day, and that's you cram as much into those hours that you do work, but it's good work, not just the whole busy for being busy type argument, isn't it?
No, yeah.
You want to look busy for the sake of being busy. And actually, if you focus on a few things on a weekly basis, you achieve more by doing less. And that's the best way.
Good stuff. Okay, so your free resources this week, you've got a property sourcing marketing cheat sheet, which is basically a list of the best methods for each sourcing strategy. Is that right?
Absolutely. So if you've followed Sourcing with Mark to the letter, you will have chosen your strategy, and then it's one of the things I mentioned is choosing the best marketing techniques for that strategy. So go on to the content upgrade this week, and you can flick down to the strategy of choice, and it will give you my top tips for achieving the quickest results.
Great. And you can get that at goliathsourcingacademy.com/session17. And I didn't have a content upgrade this week, and then Mark told me off for being lazy. So I'm going to share my essentially sharing my the list of podcasts in my Downcast app, which is what I listen to podcasts on. I'm going to share 15 business and marketing podcasts that I listening to. So 15 business and marketing podcasts worth listening to. That's you can get that at goliathsourcingacademy.com/session Ep17. Never easy to say. I'm going to bias that towards the digital marketing stuff because I know that's what people seem to kind of be most interested in. So I'll try and get as many great digital marketing podcasts in there as well. So now, just before we go, if any of the information that we shared in today's podcast is helpful for you, please do consider the other paid courses that we have. If you get out there and you go to goliathsourcingacademy.com/courses, you'll be able to see a full rundown of what it is that we have to offer. Some you can buy straight from the website. Others, just put your name down to get on a waiting list. But they are some fantastic. We've had a lot of success over the last year with all of those courses. So there's definitely something for you there. So go and have a little browse, goliathsourcingacademy.com/courses, and go and check that out. So that's it for this week. Mark, I'll leave you to say the goodbyes.
Thank you, Brad. And so signing off from the new episode of our latest season. Hope you found it useful. And as always, happy sourcing, everyone. Take care.